Okay, I'm going to do a live stream about hacking. That's because a customer or a past customer emailed me last night at 6 o'clock and said this. Says, "Hope you're well, Elliot. Do you know the hosting company called, I won't say the name. On Saturday morning, I discovered my website was down when I was with a client, exclamation mark. It's transpired that someone redirected my website to this new site, changing the database details. Do you think this is plausible? Question mark. And the answer very simply is, and that's what I reply, say, it is most definitely plausible, and you should not consider yourself not a target. There are a number of reasons for that. I've seen lots of different types of hacking. There is what I will call an aggressive hack. That is an attack that tries to damage you, your business, your website. It has no goal except to disrupt and prove that they can cause chaos. That's hard to deal with, isn't it? It's a hacker who just decided they just want to cause trouble. There's a different type of hack, which is monetary or financial, stealing, you know, coming onto your site trying to take data. That's what that GDPR stuff was about, right? The security of data and website data and online data. That's a financially incentivized hack. And finally, there's what I would call a hobbyist hackist who just does it for fun. Again, a bit hard to get your head around. They just do it for, I was going to say, a laugh, and that's probably right. Either way, you suffer. So I've seen websites which have been held to ransom where you can't get into them anymore, and you see the holding page saying you cannot, you have to pay us to release your site. That's a real thing. I've seen hacks where you don't know you've been hacked, where your site looks exactly as it should. And you log on every day and think thing is fine, and it's not. And the real implications of that I've experienced with customers are things like spamming through your server. They got into your site so they could send bulk emails from your server, which you're not allowed to do, right? You get blacklisted. And they do it in the background. You don't know. You soon will find out because your host will notice, because they'll get alerted and they'll be in touch with you very, very, very promptly because they get blacklisted. Okay, so I've seen that happen. Another sort of what I call a covert hack. Someone who had no idea their website had been hacked, looks fine. They log on, everything is fine. They could log in and change everything. But when they went to their Google listing, they changed the snippet. You know, like when you see Google results, got like a link and some text. They changed that so it went to someone else's website. I think that's a really, at the risk of sounding impressed with something I shouldn't be, that's really clever. You know, you don't know. I've changed your Google listing, not your website, so that when you get your ranking, when people click it, they go to me. I'd call that pretty smart in a really awful way. And then finally, there's a hack which is just for a laugh. You know, that exists. People who do it for the challenge and just to see that they can cause people aggravation. That's a challenge. I kind of understand that too. I shouldn't say that probably, but you know, when I was a young teenager, used to read like Commodore magazine and things. When they first published the article about modems, you could actually connect with NASA and things, which is how they talked about it. I thought that was awesome. Age 30, I thought, wow, that is so dangerous and exciting and interesting. I understand that a little, why that would be a good thing. On the end, good thing, that would be a thing someone might want to do. However, being on the end of it and dealing with customers and businesses and people's lives and disruption and losing money, that's obviously not a good thing to do at all. Definitely don't hack NASA. So what can you do? That's what she's reaching out to me for help. Her site is offline. She has no way to get it back online. And this is the process we would go through. First of all, what is the hack? I just gave you some examples of very widely differing hacks with different what's the word, impact. So we find out. So your server, your host, they can run a piece of software on server side, which will run through all the code on your website and on their server, looking for anomalies. That's what we're doing here. We're looking for anomalies. Something like WordFence, if you've got WordPress or a similar piece of software, they can do the same on the website. It will run through all the files that run your website, not your pages. They're unique to you, right? The database files, looking for anomalies. Those files should not change. The core file should stay the same. It's looking for anything that doesn't match the core file. And that will come back as an alert. So we do that first. What kind of hack was it? Is it fixable? Sometimes they're not fixable. Sometimes they're so bad, like the ransom, right? The ransom one, you can't get back into your site, that you cannot get in. Okay, so that's the first thing we do. We run a piece of software. You speak to your host, or you speak to, well, actually, WordFence, which is the WordPress version of security software, is free. So you could just run your own test. Find out what the problem is, what the infection is, what the hack was. Then you know how to deal with it. I mean, you can do a simple Google search, right, and find out. Hacks don't happen one at a time. They're a phenomenon. I can never say that word, phenomenon, right? They go for volume, mainly because they're automated. So that's what I mean about don't think you're beyond this or outside of this because you have a small website. You are not. This is automation. It's code. It's running programs going around the internet all the time, trying to get into people's sites. You know, it's like it's not exactly that, but not far off. When you see the films where you're cracking safes and it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D, it's doing that to you. Okay. I ran a test once on a website just to see how many attempts there were a week to hack a small WordPress site with really nothing to steal. And it was 550 around there in a week. That's constant attacks trying to get into your site. So in this particular case, I'm afraid the horse has bolted, if that's the right expression. You have been hacked. We're in fixing mode. It's too late. Now, I can fix hacks by replacing the core files that have been infected or changed. I can do that potentially, or you can, or we can replace with a snapshot, a saved version of your website. And that is something you should consider. Speak to your host and say, how often do you take a snapshot backup of my website? Is it every 24 hours? Our server is every 24 hours, okay? Is it every 6 months? Is it a month? You should find out because in your what we'll call Armageddon scenario with your website, ransomed and so on, actually probably the quickest thing to do is delete the whole thing and start again. You can only do that if you've got a copy of the site. And if you haven't got one, if you're not taking manual copies, your host should take a copy. How often? And if you have to reinstate the website and it took a copy 6 months ago, imagine how much work and changes you've done in 6 months. That's a big loss. Probably something you can't repeat a lot of the time. If it's every 24 hours, well, what could you have done in 24 hours? You want 24-hour backups so that you can reinstate in the worst case scenario, which is you can't fix the hack. So that's how we resolve these issues, is we find out how it's hacked and we fix them. If we can't fix them, we reinstate with a copy. Speak to your host. This should never have happened. That's the other thing I'll be saying to her is when you have a website, you can't ignore it. Okay, you can't ignore it because how hackers get into websites is they wait for, they look for doorways in the code. So if you have, for example, a website which uses plugins and pieces of software, if they're not kept up to date, most updates are security updates. When they realize there's a hack or a doorway, they patch them up and they fix them. That's what updates are. So if she hasn't, I expect this is what happened. I'll find out later. If she hasn't updated her software regularly, she's literally leaving vulnerabilities, doorways into the site. You should check for updates at least every week, I would say, at a minimum 2 weeks at a push, because you're just waiting for a problem and you don't want a problem. She's offline. Her business is not making money. Okay. We don't know when it will be reinstated. That's not a good thing. So update everything on a regular basis. Make sure you've got as much security as possible. Put in the secure socket layer, the SSL, the padlock. Do that. It's so cheap. Speak to your host. Make sure they've got the most up-to-date firewalls and all those kind of things. Make sure your security is a deterrent to these programs and hackers. And most importantly, this can sound really silly, don't use a password that someone can guess or get very easily with the 1, 2, 3, 4 ABCD mechanism, because that's what they'll go for first. Common words, common language, quicker hacking. Someone said to me on a workshop, use the pound sign, not a dollar sign when you have a password. Because there's more people in the world using the dollar, so they go after the dollars, the symbol. Less people using pound signs, so less easy to hack. If you can remember your password a month later from when you set it, it's the wrong password. You've obviously used something that's memorable. You want pretty much alien, straight from Mars, gobbledygook that you can't remember. You need to look it up and so on. So password security, yes. Update everything, yes. Housekeeping. Don't just leave your website online. So that's very important. So that's what I'll be doing with her today, is fixing her hack, touch wood, right? Or reinstating a copy, which could be up to 6 months ago if she hasn't got regular snapshots going on, in the worst case scenario. And really retraining her, is that the right word? Retraining her in keeping these people out, being security conscious, not making it easy for them. Final thing, You really should have this software doing this for you. Imagine the manual process of trying to keep up with all of this. Something like WordFence actually runs monitoring. It will alert you when changes happen to your code, when you've had a hack, when there's unusual behavior, when a new user registers. I've seen hacks where they register as admin, so no one deletes it because it's called admin. It's really important. It's really clever, in a bad way, in a really awful way. But keep the alert software, put as much security in as you possibly can, and don't use a password like Luke Skywalker, which I have seen in the past. And be a deterrent. Don't let this happen. And that's the end of the live stream.